Okay, here we are in Majorca, popular holiday destination in Spain, but it's of course also a popular destination in Europe for people to secure real estate to no doubt holiday in and let out to other people, but inevitably in the end retire to, of course, lovely climate, lovely atmosphere. Now the same rules go in terms of purchase of real estate anywhere. But it is the magnetic field that are most important to be measured. Magnetic fields penetrate everything, can't be shielded against, and so it's very important to measure that properly before committing to any property. Power lines under the ground, above the ground, doesn't really matter. Magnetic fields can still be generated, and they do come out of the ground if there's a reason for them to be there. So anyway, we're going to go around town, take some measurements, and have a bit of a look at what we can see here. Okay, so here, good example. We've got the phone tower on top of the building over there, and often people think, you know, if they're really close to it, that's the most terrible position to be in. Well, certainly not great, but there is a point where the bulk of the radiation is actually overshooting you. So at this sort of a distance, and I would say a bit further away still, is actually the area where the exposure would be most intense. Because that tower is trying to get far away with its signal, and so it's basically throwing this flamethrower of signal out, and inevitably, you know, 300-400 meters down the track is where the bulk of that flamethrower hits the ground level, let's say, and then the exposure will be most intense. So like these homes behind me here, they're copping that straight on the chin at the very high levels. In terms of those readings, I'm taking a reading of microvolts of what my body's absorbing. As you saw, that peaks over 6,000 microvolts, where in a bedroom environment we'd like to see under 30. And if it's over 100, we say that's where we draw the line. That's enough. We recommend shielding. Of course, behind some concrete and bricks, that signal is going to be reduced. That's fine, but you still would expect very high levels when the situation is like this outside. But especially these homes here, you know, they've got the glass facing this tower, and it's basically just pushing itself straight in. So that's not good. Okay, so what we can notice here is that, of course, we've got the tower behind me, basically radiating straight into those apartments right in front of it, and that's to be, of course, expected in a busy area like this, where they're trying to get more and better cell phone coverage. Of course, also the home construction tends to be, concrete or brick over here, so again, you need more signal strength to get inside. So wherever you look, you'll see those mobile phone towers already there, or popping up more as it is in the rest of the world. So certainly, important to measure when any of these things are in eyesight. Ironically enough, if you've got an apartment with a bit of a view, then you tend to have a view of phone towers even in the far distance. And so those towers also have an uninterrupted view of you. And so what that means is that an apartment with a view, if it's a view of just the ocean, you might be okay, but if it's a view of any part of the city, that also means that cell phone towers have an uninterrupted view of you, and you tend to pay for that with higher exposure to radio frequency radiation. Now, of course, all these exposures will be well below the government exposure limits. But as is around the world, those exposure standards are set way too high, in our opinion. You got to be so careful. See, there's little transmission towers just sitting on the buildings or just in between, and it could seriously raise those radio frequency radiation exposure levels, and not as close as you think. You know, there's this, I wouldn't call it a sweet spot, but a certain distance where it's just enormously intense if you're at that distance from those towers. So you can be too close and actually be a good thing, kind of. Although with cell phone towers, they also often have those round directional transmitters on there, and that's how one tower connects to another. And so you might be looking at the tower that's near you, but kind of forgetting about the towers that are trying to talk to it, and that'll be the big problem. Okay, now what was interesting to note, I don't know if you could hear it, but in the sound, you know, besides the usual gargle of radio frequency radiation, there was a sweep you could hear, zip, and a couple of seconds later again, zip. That sound is radar, and so I mean, I'm here in one of the holiday sort of areas, very popular with tourists. And Palma de Majorca, which is, you know, the major city here where the international airport is, that of course has a radar, and the approach path actually goes in this direction. But radar, of course, sweeps 360 degrees around the airport, and so it's interesting to see that I'm here at ground level and still clearly being touched by that radar signal. So you can imagine being in one of those apartments higher up, or having a property that's higher up, that'd be even easier, and you would imagine stronger to have those fields, you know, to be exposed to those sorts of fields. Okay, what we do notice just having a walk around town is that a lot of the power cables are of the, let's say, twisted variety. That's actually a good thing. You have an active or a hot wire that the current comes in. You have a neutral that takes the current back, and both of those cables will produce a magnetic field. Now, when the cables are close together, there's a cancelling out effect, and so the closer they are, the better. Still no guarantee that there won't be any magnetic fields though. There's all sorts of reasons why the flow of current could be uneven, and then this cancelling out effect is greatly reduced. And so even though this is not a home free card, so to speak, it's normally a bonus having this at the front of your property instead of, you know, 3 or 4 of those separated wires. Okay, so here that's very different. So here we've got that separated wire situation. So the magnetic fields are not reduced as much as they would have been were the cables together and twisted. So this is you know, less ideal. Still, it doesn't need to be a cause for alarm. The point is you have to measure it before committing to any property, renting or buying. Now, it has to be noted that these levels depend on electricity usage. So there'll be a 24-hour cycle with that. You know, there'll be certain parts of the day where more electricity is used, air conditionings are turned on, and so forth. So yeah, this can vary. So if you're looking at purchasing a property, securing it, you should measure this and come back a number of times throughout a 24-hour period, even at night, to measure and see what that changes to. Again, it doesn't need to be bad. You know, you have to measure this before taking a decision to purchase or rent a property. So you need a decent quality Gauss meter to measure this. And you know, if you think you've got okay values, that's when you get a professional to come in, double check your work, and measure the other radiation types, which are far more common, like radio frequency radiation and electric field exposure from internal wiring. And your professional will be able to assess that for you properly and recommend how to mitigate that, which is normally often possible. There's these magnetic fields that are tricky, and they should be avoided at all cost. Okay, taking some magnetic field measurements in just another average street. The levels are nice and low. It's becoming clearer that it's a radio frequency radiation here that really can surprise you by the amount of cell phone towers and transmission points that are here. But at least here in the streets that I'm looking through with those twisted power cables, which are great, there's less surprises with magnetic fields, which is lovely. Of course, you still need to check every single one. Now here the wiring changes somewhat. And so continuing on from here, the levels are a little higher. Now I'm right underneath those cables, so you would expect them to be elevated. And in a bedroom you would ideally see 30 or less. So all things considered, a promising reading for this street. You know, if I was to measure in the bedrooms over there, you would expect those levels to drop off further. Now of course, if that was a bedroom right there, being that close, that might be a bit too close for comfort. So you just have to measure and then you know. So here we've got a very different situation. So I've just turned a corner. Again, we've got those 4 cable sort of local distribution lines here. And all of a sudden we're looking at 340 nanoteslas. Now that's of course way too high. That's in the zone of research linking melatonin suppression and its anti-cancer action at 200 and over nanoteslas, and childhood leukemia research coming in at 400 nanoteslas and above, kind of consistently. So you can only fear to imagine somebody's got their bedroom behind their balcony, and they probably have what they are exposed to right now. Okay, so further down the same street, those levels are getting worse. Okay, so we still have those lines up there. So it drops off a bit now. So I'm heading towards the building. A bit will start to drop off. I'm also now past where those 4 wires are. Now that level gets less. See? So if I go back here, wow, it immediately goes up. See, not so bad, reduces down. Yeah, that's exactly what you got to keep an eye out for and measure how it affects inside the building. And obviously here we've got multiple apartments coming together. This is no doubt their power distribution area. And so here we've got very high readings, but it's somewhat to be expected. Where that's problematic if there's somebody's bedroom on the other side of it. See, because the distance it drops off, but if you're right behind it, that's way too high. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that little walk around town. As you can see in here, there's a lot of things to sort of keep an eye out, but it's not all that difficult. Now here are some key points. So if you're looking at securing a property, the most important thing is to measure magnetic fields, because they penetrate basically everything and they can't be shielded against practically. So those are the most important ones to avoid. Now you can assess that yourself relatively easily with a quality amateur Gauss meter. We'll recommend one in the comments below. Then when it comes to electric fields and radio frequency radiation, you're going to need training and a whole heap of different equipment to assess that properly. But most properties have electric field exposure, and of course with more and more wireless technology coming out, most properties have an increasing amount of radio frequency radiation, many already in a level where we would say it's reason enough to shield against it, which is not all that difficult. We have verifiable solutions for that. Now when it comes to those other two, you need help from a professional. Now we have consultants, many are listed on our website. We also have many that are not listed on our website. So have a look on our site, reach out to one of our consultants, and if there's nobody near, please reach out to us and we'll see who's nearest,
or maybe some of our team might have plans to come to your neck of the woods anyway. All right, so I hope you found this all interesting. When it comes to magnetic fields, the thing to avoid, well, governments say 1,000 milligauss is perfectly acceptable. There's research as low as 1 milligauss, which in our industry is sort of looked at, that is showing health issues. Actually 4 milligauss, multiple studies show issues with childhood leukemia being more prevalent in those areas. Down to 2 milligauss, there's an interaction with melatonin, which is a hormone which is like your cleanup crew at night, and it would affect its anti-cancer action. 1.6 would double the chances of sperm abnormalities, and down to 1 milligauss, a study with children with leukemia, their mortality rate increased dramatically if they were exposed to just between 1 and 2 milligauss. Again, government limits in most countries is 1,000 milligauss based on very old research. So 1 seems to be, as far as research has gone, it seems the level that you definitely want to stay clear of, especially in a sleeping environment. So within our industry, we basically would like to see 0.3 milligauss, or if you have a European meter, that would be 30 nanotesla as the ideal or less reading in a bedroom environment. All right, hope you found this all useful. It was certainly fun to take you for a walk around town. And yeah, if you've got any questions, please reach out. Subscribe to our newsletter and of course subscribe to our channel. All right, thanks.